Right. This is a video. I don't know how it'll be received, but it's interesting to me personally, so I wanted to do this. And it might be a little bit ranting because it's a subject that's pretty important, I think. And it's basically going to be about real Christianity and what it means to be a Christian, and how Christianity is essentially the only way that we're gonna save sort of Western civilization, or what used to be Christendom. Now, a lot of people, friends of mine included, that are not Christians or non-practicing Christians anyways, sort of think of Christianity as this lackadaisical sort of, mealy-mouthed, quietly accepting and submissive type of belief system. That's not Christianity. That's Churchianity. And as a sort of to whet your appetite type thing, that's why I'm wearing this t-shirt which my friend Vox Day gave me. I don't know if you can read that, but it basically says, you can't run, you can't hide, you get helicopter ride, which is a play on word on the Pinochet regime. Now, Pinochet was considered a vile dictator who was responsible for the desaparecidos that disappeared, because a lot of communists and communist sympathizers were disappeared under his government. There was torture, there was interrogation, there was political prisoners, and there were people that were executed for their political beliefs. A few thousand people died under the Chilean regime, and because of that, Pinochet was thought of as a vicious tyrant. And I'd just like to point out that under Stalin, which was a socialist and then communist regime, remember that the aim of socialism is to have communism, and ultimately communism is supposed to be paradise on earth. And under Stalin and Mao, almost 100 million people were killed by these two supposedly humanitarian philosophers of communism. And who knows that if Chile had become communist, who knows that it wouldn't have become some other hellhole where millions would have died instead of just a few thousand. Now, that's very unfortunate if you're a family or a relative or the actual person that got killed under that regime. I'm sure that's cold comfort to you or those people. But the thing is, wherever socialism has been tried, massive death, poverty, deprivation of all sorts has occurred. So, was Pinochet a terrible, evil tyrant? Or was he a fallible human being that tried to do the best he thought for his country and possibly saved millions of lives? It's hard to tell because nobody can predict the future. I know that the first time I heard of Pinochet being considered a hero, I was stunned. I was shocked. I was like, oh, he was a bad guy, wasn't he? And that just goes to show the conditioning that we're all under every day, in multiple situations. The very same thing applies to Christianity, because you've been lied to massively about what Christianity is. You might think you're a Christian, and in fact you're not. You're just a Churchian. It's quite a rude shock for a lot of people. So I just wanted to point out that I have friends that I know that are that were Christian a lot longer than I have been, that are Christian, and they are what I would call real Christians. And there's a certain quality, there's a timbre to it that's different. Your average Churchian never has any very strong opinions, sort of holds his ground a little bit on some biblical stuff. That's basically about it, That's not Christianity. Christianity is a belief system that is geared to the belief that we are operating behind enemy lines. I'm Catholic, and there are only a few of us left, as I've made clear in my other videos about what Catholicism is and who is actually a Catholic, and the fact that Bergoglio is in no way Pope, neither are any of his predecessors since 1958. And in fact, Bergoglio is not even a Christian of any denomination, and I think that the correct denomination for him is what I call Novus Orco, which is basically a branch of Satanism. The Novus Orco is the new orcs. So it's a mixture of satanic, evil, child molesting perverts, and they've been trying to infiltrate the church for centuries, and eventually they succeeded. But the fact that I'm a Catholic means that I essentially stick to Catholic canon law, and one of the basic catechisms of the Catholic Church that were issued before 1958. There's a very brilliant catechism book, but it's in Italian, so it won't be very useful to English-speaking people, by a guy called Carlo Dragone. So if you can get that and you read Italian, that's a beautiful, beautiful exposition of Catholic thought in a way that is really quite brilliant. And that's the thing. What you think is Catholicism is, child molesting perverts and predatory homosexuals. And it's not really your fault to a certain extent if that's what you believe, especially if you yourself are not Catholic. All you can do is look at what purports to be the Catholic Church, and you think, oh, well, those are Catholics. Similarly, if you're a Protestant, one of the 30,000 plus denominations that exist, I think it's closer to 40,000 now, you're going to be squabbling over some minor tenet of theology, and whether you should have a lesbian female priest that doesn't believe in hanging the cross in her church, and whether that's a valid pastor or not. So, the reality is that most so-called Christians are Churchians, regardless of denomination, whether you're talking about Catholics, Protestant, Orthodox, or, I would guess that the largest percentage of real Christians in any denomination is probably the Copts, for the simple reason that if you're a Copt, you probably live in an area of the planet where being a Christian is really hazardous to your health. It's actually dangerous because they're getting slaughtered daily. So what is a Christian? What do I mean by a Christian? As a Catholic, the Catholic Church teaches that the only certain way to salvation is through the Catholic Church, and a lot of people misinterpret that. A lot of Protestant propaganda against Catholics has been going on for centuries. One of the things that the Protestants keep going on is about the idolatry of Mary, and it's utter rubbish. So the thing is, you've got to understand that the Catholic Church actually accepts that only God knows your heart. And as a Catholic, we believe the Catholic Church is the surest way to achieve salvation, but it is not the only way. Now, a Catholic priest isn't going to rush to tell you this, because he's a priest of the Catholic Church. He's trying to do his best to save people, and he believes in the Catholic dogma. It would be unreasonable of him to try and tell you that, oh, it's okay for you to be some kind of weird pagan that maybe just gets saved. But the reality is that the Catholic Church in its dogmatic form believes that no man can tell whether you're going to be saved. So you could be some Protestant, which I essentially reckon are mostly heretics, and I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but I also do kind of believe it. You can't you're not reasonable if you think that the church marched along for 1,500 years with very little schisms, and then some fat German that wanted to bang nuns got it right and fixed everything by changing the Bible itself and then saying that the Bible is the word and that's it, you shouldn't touch or mess with it because that's the only thing that counts. So he messes with the only thing that counts, and see, he got it right, really? A German? Come on. So my personal belief system leans towards Catholicism being the closest to the truth, but that doesn't mean that I don't accept that there are other people who follow a different path and who may well be better Christians than I am. It's not particularly hard to be a better Christian than I am because I'm not a particularly good one. Now, I have friends, just a very quick rundown, I have friends that are some kind of non-denominational Protestant, which I believe are true Christians. I've got a friend who's a Baptist, which I basically consider as, illiterate peasants who don't know how to read. And we tease each other quite openly about the fact that I call him an illiterate peasant and he calls me a papist scum. But there's no doubt in my mind that that guy is a Christian. And there's also no doubt in my mind that I will never convince him to convert to Catholicism. And he's never going to convince me to convert to, his pagan rites of some absurd thought of baptism, being a Baptist of some kind. It's just a random offshoot of some Protestant denomination, although he will deny that vehemently and says, we baptize just as, John the Baptist used to do. So, like I said, they're illiterate. I've got friends that are sort of what you would call lapsed Catholics, sort of. In other words, they're Catholics, cradle Catholic type of things, but they think Bergoglio is scum, but they don't necessarily follow my sedeprivationist, which is different from sedevacantist. Sedeprivationist means there is an impostor in the seat, and there has been for a long time. Sedeprivationist is saying the seat is empty. The seat is not empty. It is materially filled. It is spiritually empty. It is materially filled by an impostor. So, again, part of the reason that I was attracted to Catholicism is also the accuracy of thought and the accuracy of the logical syllogisms that they create. You can find fault with anything, but at the end of the day, if you realize that Christianity is the truth and the way, pick one, whichever suits you best. But regardless of which denomination you end up being, I want to make it very clear to you that being a Christian means standing up for truth. It means fighting against the enemy, and the enemy is all around us because the enemy is evil. Now, this is nothing to be afraid of. This is nothing to be despondent on. I wrote a column at Men of the West called Rome Has Fallen. Try and Google that. Rome has fallen. Rome is filled with predatory homosexual pederasts, people who abuse little kids. There was an article written by a lady called Megan Fox in JP Media that exposed a priest, a Catholic priest, dying in his dying days. So he's in a hospital, and he admits to the abuses of boys, and the sexual abuse of boys. And this guy is, still ending off his life in this Vatican-sponsored, paid-for lodgings. And the whole seminary and church thing where they were abusing deaf-mute children. Yeah. Now, if you think that I consider those people Catholics, or if you think that I'm a Catholic of the same stripe of those, you got another thing coming. As far as I'm concerned, people who do that sort of thing should be strung up from lampposts, okay? I'm not advocating that you go out there and cause violence. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, it is my belief that we need to change the government in Italy, the government of the Vatican, the governments of all of Christendom, to ensure that we have proper Christian countries, which would not allow any such behavior. Now, whether your particular country that you live in, like I do now at the moment, perhaps doesn't have the death penalty. And then following the law, people who commit sexual abuse against children, as far as I'm concerned, should be put to jail for life with no possibility of parole, and they should be put to back-breaking labor and every cent that they produce should be given to the victims of their crimes. Not to the government, because that's incentivizing the government to put people in jail for crimes they may not have committed. So, I want there to be a very clear, very strong system of justice that ensures that only the truly guilty are found guilty. But if you're found guilty of sexual rape of children and stuff like that, as far as I'm concerned, you have no longer got a right to life. And that's Catholic thought, by the way. Catholics believe in the death penalty, which is one of the reasons we know that Bergoglio is a heretic apostate, if he ever was any kind of Christian, because he's quite recently, gone against the death penalty. Catholicism and Christian thought absolutely believes in the death penalty. The death penalty is a duty if you're a good Christian, because you have to remove elements of society that are harmful, toxic, evil, corrupting, and dangerous, deadly, especially for the most innocent, like children. I was very interested to see that Owen Benjamin, who's not a personal friend of mine, I just watch his videos, but he was raised Catholic, and he also agrees that the Pope is a scumbag, which is very interesting. I don't know, I think he's probably considers himself somewhat non-denominational, and part of the reason that he was rolling his eyes on everybody trying to quote the Bible was because he went to Catholic Sunday school, and that will make anybody sane run away from Christianity at a high rate of speed, especially if you're highly intelligent, especially if you've got a little bit of a brain, especially if you can do basic logic. Because the Churchianity, the pedophile-infested fake church that presents itself as Catholicism, that is now teaching the so-called Sunday schools, and that is teaching the so-called catechisms, and that is doing the so-called Novus Ordo masses, they're absolutely absurd. They're a joke. They're I don't even know how to describe it. The word in it is a pagliacciata in Italian. We would call it. It's a clowning of the truth. And as a Christian, if you want an image of what I think a Christian is, think crusader. Think a guy in full armor that takes no shit. Think the Knights of Malta that repealed the siege of Malta in the 16th century. Think people that would die before they denied Jesus Christ. Think people that will stand firm in front of unjust laws and unjust governments and would get put to death or put to jail simply for sharing their beliefs. And we can see this, we can see that Christians are the most persecuted religion on the planet. That's a statistical fact. Don't take my word for it, figure it out for yourself. And being a Christian is not about, sitting around there sort of LARPing, live action role playing at being saintly and turning the other cheek. No. Again, part of the reason I'm Catholic is because a Catholic has a duty to defend the innocent. A Catholic has a duty to defend the innocent with absolute violence if required, So don't start off with violence, we don't that's not your go-to response for an argument, for something that goes wrong, for disagreement. You try and reason. The main aim of a Christian, of a Catholic, certainly is to use reason to control the emotions. So that is important. And certainly, violence is sort of anathema to Christianity to a great extent. But it is a duty to defend the innocent, including yourself. And if you are attacked, you are to fight back, and fight back as hard as you want, and as until necessary. The concept of just war is that even war, which is done by the state, so essentially, something that a Christian can object to, and there have been very brave Christians that have objected to war. And a brilliant film based on a true story of a real man is Hacksaw Ridge. You should look at that movie. That man was a Christian. The fact that he wasn't a Catholic and whatever, I'm nobody to say, oh, well, he wasn't a Catholic, therefore he's going to hell. No, that man had balls of steel, saved a lot of people, and refused to carry a weapon because he, correctly, I believe, by the way, correctly, he believed that creating that violence as a Christian is wrong. And he's right about that. I agree with that. I do agree that violence is always wrong. But, I've got my Kurgan law of living in a fallen world, which is rule number 1, violence is always wrong. Rule number 2, in a fallen world, sometimes violence is necessary. And rule number 3, thank God for purgatory. I'm Catholic, I got purgatory. I might spend a couple of thousand years in purgatory, but hey, here in the world, in the worldly mess that we're put in, if I'm attacked, if my family's attacked, if people I care about are attacked, if innocents are attacked, if there is a war, fight back. I've got no problem fighting back. And as a Christian, that's exactly the attitude you should have. Stand for truth. Don't be quiet. When you getting forced in these things forced on you, remember that the majority of people do not agree with sick things like abortion or this like gender neutral bathrooms where you have to have mentally ill transvestites, 6'2" men pretending to be a woman going into the toilets of little girls and then sexually abusing them, because that's already happened on several occasions. And the whole, it's really interesting. There's an article recently, and I'm gonna put a link to it at the bottom of this video. I've archived the article because one of the CEOs, I think it was, of Planned Parenthood outlines, she converted to Christianity thanks to a Christian person she hired in her work, who eventually converted her. And she has now admitted that Planned Parenthood instigated sex education in schools to get young teenage girls pregnant, offered them free, barely functional contraceptives that only work if you take them at exactly the same hour every day, which, as she says in the article, is practically impossible for a teenager to do, so that they would get pregnant, and then they would counsel them to have an abortion so that they would have abortions, and they made money out of this. And this woman ran 4 different Planned Parenthood clinics, which paid for themselves within the first month. Just imagine, understand what this means. This is intentionally getting young girls pregnant so that they can have an abortion, so that they can sell the baby parts. If you don't think that that is evil, there's no hope for you. You will burn in hell, as far as I'm concerned, and good riddance. You have to understand what abortion is. And don't get me wrong, I used to be pro-abortion because we all got brainwashed. When I was in my 20s, I used to think, abortion, it's a woman's right to choose, all that stuff. Because, well, it's not in my body. How can I, force a woman to go through that if she doesn't want to? It's an accident. And, it's, I'm not saying I'm not guilty. I'm guilty. I've been involved in having abortions with women I used to be with. So I'm as guilty as anybody, and again, I pray there really is a purgatory, because I deserve all the punishment that is coming to me that way, regardless of what the women involved wanted to do or didn't want to do, or what their part of the guilt in it was. That's irrelevant. I got my guilt. No one's taking that away from me, So don't sit there thinking I'm just some kind of zealot that doesn't know what he's talking about. I used to believe the same shit most people believe, which abortion is fine and contraception is only sensible, and it isn't. Contraception is a hellish evil thing, because contraception means that once you have contraception, sex is no longer about creating children and a family. Sex becomes entertainment, and if sex becomes entertainment, the children become a distraction, become a negative. So you kill them, so they don't get in the way of your fucking Netflix account. So you know, and there's a lot of people that are frustrated, a lot of men that are frustrated, they don't know where to look, and they sort of think, oh, well, Christianity is this lame-ass, pussified bullshit, and so, you know, maybe we should go back to the old pagan gods of the Vikings or something. That's bullshit. Nobody believes in Odin. It's crap. It's live action or role playing. You're just pretending. And again, if you were to look into those pagan religions, they were absolutely horrific. You know, if you look at what they really believed and what they did as a result of that belief, it was just as bad as the vicious cycle of mass murdering of babies that we have. So Christianity is the only way forward. And it's not a pussified religion. Pick up the Bible and read the New Testament by yourself. Don't ask anybody to necessarily interpret it for you. You know, if you're interested, I've done other videos on this stuff. Go look at those videos. There's links there. There's like links to real Catholics and so on. But regardless, you know, this is not a denominational specific video that I want to make. What I want to say is, if you're Catholic, if you're Orthodox, if you're some kind of weird heretic Protestant, you know, I don't care. Be a man. Stand up for the truth. Stand up for justice. Stand up for beauty. Stand in the way of this wave of clown world bullshit that they're throwing at you every day. Start seeing it in films. Look at Netflix. Netflix is literally, I mean, anything I watch on Netflix now, all I'm doing is really watching the brainwashing that they're trying to infect you with. And it's more overt in certain cases than in others. You know, there are certain films that you think, oh, this is mostly okay. And then there are certain series or whatever that are just absolute degeneracy flooding into your brain, trying to make you believe the upside down, you know, the inverted pyramid of power that is satanic. Remember, anything satanic is the opposite of the truth. It's the opposite of the truth. You know, there are very uncomfortable statistics, very uncomfortable realities nobody wants to face. Face them. Face them and display them and put them out in the open. Because there's more of us, there's more normal people, even if you're an agnostic, you're an atheist. But you realize you can do logic. You know, I was an atheist for years, and then I was an agnostic for even more years. The reality is that if you can do logic, if you can see reality, if you base your day-to-day waking moments in reality, you can absolutely see the clown world nonsense that is going around is harmful, is dangerous to little kids. I mean, in the UK now, there is a foster parenting family which has transgendered 3 kids, 4-year-olds, which are now being given hormone treatments so they will become sterile by the time they're in puberty. How does a 4-year-old choose to be a girl or a boy? That is child abuse. Child abuse at the highest, most evil level that is conceivable. And the courts in this country are allowing that to happen. They're not doing it to Muslim children, because we all know that you do that and the next day you're going to have, you know, a few hundred Muslims rioting outside the courthouse, if not burning it the fuck down. And you know what? On this particular topic, I'm with the Muslims. You know, I will fight alongside a Muslim before I stand next to a Churchian that says, well, you know, we shouldn't complain and transgenderism is okay and you should give hormone blockers to 4-year-olds. No. If you think that that's okay, as far as I'm concerned, you're my enemy. You're a clear and present danger to every child. And I don't care if you're a judge, I don't care who you are. If you believe that a 4-year-old child should be given hormone blockers which affect your entire life, will affect your life forever, because a 4-year-old gets to decide whether he's a boy or a girl, yeah? A 4-year-old can't decide to drink alcohol. A 4-year-old can't decide to go to war. A 4-year-old can barely figure out when they need to take a piss. And they'll sometimes not know and do it in their pants. But you think it's okay for a 4-year-old to pick hormone blockers that will mess up his whole life? No. That's those foster parents, evil scumbags that they are, who are damaging, destroying a little child. That's what's happening. So if you're a Christian, I don't care what denomination, fight against that shit. Talk about it. Riot about it. Rioting is violent, right? Go picket about it. Go stand in front of the courthouse and complain. Write to your politicians. Do something. Do something. We're all here to do something. This video is me doing something. Do something. Make a show of it. Don't stand for this rubbish. Because they're trying to isolate you. That's how they work. They isolate everybody, and it's like everybody's too scared to talk. Everybody's too scared to say anything. You're not allowed to say that, it's evil to give a 4-year-old, hormone blockers. It's evil. I'm telling you, it's evil. I'm saying it. It's evil. I don't care who says it's not. It is fucking evil. And that 4-year-old did not make that choice. And no one is ever going to convince me otherwise. No one. Doesn't matter what you do to me. You can put me in jail, you can kill me, you can shoot me, you can torture me. Maybe you can do something that'll make me say that I believe it's okay. Maybe. But that doesn't mean that I'll believe it. Ever. There's no part of me that's ever going to believe that you giving hormone blockers to a 4-year-old is okay. So who are you? Who are you? Whether you're an agnostic, an atheist, I don't care. Who are you? Are you on the side of protecting and defending innocent little kids or not? And remember that if you are a Christian, it is your duty to do so. So, don't be a Churchian. Remember, Churchians are wrong. Be hot or be cold. It's in the Bible, right? Be hot or be cold. Don't be lukewarm, or you shall be vomited out by God and any right-thinking person too. So that's my little rant for today. We'll see the response. If there is a good one, I'll carry on and do more in this series of real Christianity. But we'll see. Let me know.